persons, like human packages tied up in strings. Black rage can come from all these kinds of things. Black rage is founded on blatant denial, squeezed economics, subsistence survival, deafening silence and social control. Black rage is founded on wounds in the soul. When the dogs bite, when the bee sings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember all these kinds of things, and then I don't feel so bad.
Let's give a round of encouragement to our dancers. To give them time to change to the final scene before we have Dr. Umar Johnson, our guest speaker, come around. What we want you to do now is, this is the part that everybody can participate. And what we're going to do is, you can help us with this event so that we can kind of calibrate some of the expenses that we will incur. We would like you to give a liberal donation, and we'll pass the trail. The next thing that you're going to see will be African fashion. African fashion will be, will show you the history of African fashion, and we appreciate your support in this effort. We'll be right with you.
My name is DjFullmoon. I'm a direct descendant of Cujo Zulu Lewis. I recently started writing a book about a year and a half ago, and it just led me to keep on searching. And also found out my grandfather was a bend-off in Petway, and that's the G's been the book maker. And y'all know how they came down and got the books and, auction them off, and they give us no money. But my grandma was LMA Bend-off, her maiden name was Lewis. Her mother's name was Beatrice Lewis. So hopefully with this book, I just urge everybody to try to go back and find your history. It's like the Sandcastle bird, it looks back, and that's just letting you know that you gotta know your past in order to know where you're going. So I just want to just encourage everybody. I also run a studio, any kids, the artists, my number is 661-8803, under the honor roll program, and I also do a tennis program for any school councils, teachers. Definitely get with me. And honor the God and the ancestors. Remember them together, like I say, I'll shake. All right. Thank y'all.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I want to come down here. I don't know if you can see this. If you can't, you'll still be okay. I'm going to repeat the questions. This presentation that I'm going to go over right now, and I might try to squeeze another one in with it, but I definitely want to start with this one. And it's called Understanding the Miseducation Machine, Everything You Need to Know About the Academic Process. This is a regular special education presentation that I put together for parents and people who work with our children, because I'm noticing that many of our young people are being miseducated, exploited, abused in school by way of miseducation, but also by way of mental health exploitation. The so-called ADHD and the so-called conduct disorders and the so-called opposition or defiant disorders. And this is largely happening because we don't know the law. The parents. We don't know what we can say no to. We don't know what we can say yes to. We don't know what the schools can, and should not be doing. So tonight, I want to give you guys a couple of tools you can use. Some wisdom and information so that you can do a better job fighting this miseducation machine until we build our own schools for our children. Because the goal is not to force mobile public schools to properly educate your children. They can, because public school was never started to properly teach African children. That was never a goal. It wasn't even started to properly educate white children, believe it or not. Public education grew out of a need to prepare people to work for corporations that was looking for cheap and available labor. It also grew out of a need to teach children what to think, but not how to think. So public school is a socialization tool. It's almost like a daycare center on steroids, where you basically condition the thinking so that the child goes to that place in society that was pre-prepared for them before they even showed up to school. The research says that a child's academic standing will mirror the standing of his or her parents in the larger society within 3 to 5 years after starting their education. That means what? I don't know if you can stay right there, my brother.
Yeah, 4, 5.
Because you blind the folks. But you good.
Come on.
But so we need to understand how school's job is to create and maintain the American social order. That's why school is here. Not so your kids can go to college, so they can open up a business. That's not why you have public school. Public school is to keep you where the society says you're supposed to be, and to make sure you stay where society says you're supposed to be. We're going to make sure people who don't look like you do the teaching. Before school desegregation, the larger society cannot control how well-educated black children were, because we taught them ourselves. And we produced geniuses ourselves. See, when we talk about the gas mask, and when we talk about the self-lubricating engine, and when we talk about the helicopter, and when we talk about the cell phone, and when we talk about the internet, the refrigerator, we're talking about inventions that came out of the minds of black children who were taught by black people in schools that they control. So you have a different type of an African American child now, because as opposed to community education, you have public schooling. And the one thing you need to know about public schooling is that public schooling can only produce what the society allows it to produce. And because there's no longer a need for blacks in the American economic order, the purpose of public school is what? To prepare black boys for a life of prison and black girls for a life of poverty. Let me say it again. To prepare black boys for a life of prison and black girls for a life of poverty. Wrong charge, is it? Let's look at the statistics. Right now, today, only 1 out of every 4 black boys in this country will get a high school diploma. 1 out of 4. That's 25% success rate of American public schools. If only 1 out of every 4 Jewish American kids was getting a diploma, public school would stop until it was fixed. If only 1 out of every Italian or Irish, Polish, or any other European child, if only 1 out of every 4 white boys was graduating, public education will be put under arrest until it was fixed, overhauled. But because it's 1 out of every 4 black boys getting a high school diploma, business continues as is. Out of every 100 black baby boys born, only 3 of them will end up in college. Only 3 out of 100. Most states spend more, not most, every state spends more money on incarceration than they do on education. Now we got a lot of black men in jail. And a lot of people want us to think that they're in jail because they lack discipline. And that they go back to jail because they love crime. Well, white people commit just as much crime as black people. Probably more. But the black people go to jail because crime in law is a function of interest and motivation. And so the so-called justice system isn't interested or motivated in mass incarcerating white people. Their interest and motivation has always been in mass incarcerating black people.
Shit.
In fact, a white boy could go to jail, come out, and still find his way to a career, still find his way to a decent trade. I know because I know many of them. They got all types of secret programs you don't even hear about to rehabilitate the white kids. But there's no such thing for the black ones. For the parents, if you haven't already, make sure you get a copy of my new book. It's at the back of the room, Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. In my book, I'm going to teach you how to deal with disruptive behavior without giving your children medication. In my book, I'm going to teach you the definitions of all these disabilities they like throwing out at our children. In my book is a whole chapter on frequently asked questions. You're going to learn the whole special ed process, the whole ADHD process. If you read my book cover to cover, whether you have a son or a daughter, I promise you that if you do what I tell you to do, school system will not be able to make your child a statistic. I work with attorneys, most of whom are white, but I don't mind because it's for the sake of our children. I do a lot of due process work. I do a lot of special ed case review. I do a lot of independent evaluations. I train teachers, principals, superintendents. That's what I do. I travel the country on this crusade to improve the education of our young people until we build our own schools for them. So if any parent here has any issues with your child after today, my contact information is in my book. You can email me the problem, and I'll respond back to you, telling you how to do that.
Rapings and beatings and suffering that worsens, like human packages tied up in strings. Black rage can come from all these kinds of things. Black rage is founded on blatant denial, squeezed economics, subsistence survival, deafening silence and social control. Black rage is founded on wounds in the soul. When the dogs bite, when the beatings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply